Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Patti Clark. She is a bestseller author and speaker. She has been dedicated or has dedicated most of her life to inspiring women to embrace their best selves. I love that when I read that in your bio. She's the author of This Way Up, 7 Tools for Unleashing Your Creative Self and Transforming Your Life. And her latest book, which is the topic of our conversation today, Recovery Road Trip, Finding Purpose and Connection on the Journey Home. So, yes, I want to mention too that your latest book is part recovery journal, part travel log, and part woman's search for self. What's not to love about that too?
Thank you.
Full bio will be at the end. So the question that I love asking everyone from the get-go is, for some reason, it never left me. How would you introduce yourself, Patti? Who are you in your own words as of this moment?
Thank you so much, Valeria. Valeria. Um, um, I've listened to several of your podcasts, so I thought about that question. So, and what came to me was that I am a curious, courageous, creative, compassionate, caring woman. I'm a grateful mother of 2 amazing sons, a grandmother to one absolutely adorable grandson. I'm a writer, an author. I'm a wife to an amazing husband and a sister to a wonderful woman. And hopefully an inspiration to a few people that I've met in my life.
Gosh, that's beautiful. I love how the words that you choose to use when speaking to people around you, and that shows a lot of love. Like it's
Hmm.
really full of love. It's beautiful. What inspired you to become an author, Patty?
Well, partly it was because I've always been a writer. Ever since I was an adolescent, I journaled. I love words. I love writing. I love playing with words. So I've journaled for most of my life. And I started running workshops for teenagers about 30 plus years ago. And we incorporated journaling and creativity, visualization, meditation, and a lot of the mothers of these teenagers came to me and said, I want to do what you're doing with my kid. I want that. So I started running workshops for these mothers. And what invariably happened at the end of the workshops was that women were saying, I want more. I want to do more of this. Is there something? And so that was the impetus for writing This Way Up. It was the women from those creative empowerment workshops that I was writing for women as sort of it's a narrative first half, journaling second half, and it's a 12-week journaling workshop within the book. And then what happened after that? And after I wrote that, I thought, okay, good, I'm done. And then that nudge on my shoulder came again. I was in recovery for 13 years, and for various reasons, mostly just my own arrogance and I don't know. I can't think of a better word, mostly just arrogance. Thought that I could do this without the help, and I started drinking again. And after 12 years out drinking again, I came back and I became very curious as to why other women started drinking again, relapsed against once they had found sobriety. Why would you go out and start killing yourself again? So I interviewed lots and lots of women. I don't know how many, lots of women, took various notes, and then felt like, okay, I have to write this. And so that's how I wrote Recovery Road Trip, because I felt like this is a real common theme that a lot of women had of this exuberance when we first found recovery, and then a sort of loss of that, and then a search for more, which unfortunately it's led some of us back to drinking.
Right. Wow. I have so many questions for you by listening to what you just said. I mean, one that's the fresh one is the cause of addiction. Why do we become addicted to something? It doesn't have to be substance, right?
Oh no, you can be, yeah, addicted to anything that helps you escape yourself. So drinking and drugs numb us out, right? It numbs the whole body. But when you're feeling like, I'm not comfortable in my skin, people eat, people shop, people have sex, people stare at their phones or at the computer, people find pornography, people find exercise, where if you exercise enough and work hard enough and create those um, endorphins and chemicals in your brain, you're stepping out of your body. So the goal is to find a space in your life, a life that you don't need to escape from. But when you ask why, the best answer I have is, are you familiar with Gabor Mate, Dr. Gabor
Yes,
Mate?
he's
Yes.
wonderful.
Oh, he's wonderful. And he talks about trauma, and that most of us that have experienced trauma of one kind or another, especially in early childhood, will seek to alleviate that pain. And we seek to get rid of it in various ways. But for many of us, myself included, I started drinking and using drugs when I was 13. And I found out that, hey, this numbs me out. I don't hate myself. I don't feel so uncomfortable in the world. I can escape. And so, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So living a life that we don't need to escape from, a life
Mm,
that we are fully embodied
mm,
and fully alive. Because it's easy to go back, even like in my case, 10 years ago that I started living authentically, coming from the heart and doing exactly what I wanted to do. Then I built, this not let's say intentionally all the steps, but one step at a time. And this became a healing spirituality marketing agency for
hmm
this work. But I didn't plan that way. But then becomes like a lot of work, and I'm like, wait a minute, it almost feels like I'm addicted to this. I have to have the conversations. They don't feel addicted to me, addictive. It feels like wonderful. My heart's open. It's just, I mean, it's just my sacred space. This
Oh,
is really what I
absolutely.
love doing.
Oh, that's not addictive. That is purposeful. That is bringing life.
But then the work behind the scenes, it's a lot
Mm,
of work that
it
goes
is.
through with the podcast and in the agency, and I work with a lot of people. So that made me question a lot of times. I stop in a question, wait a minute, am I meant to be doing this? So talk to me for a moment about this life that we want to live, full of purpose and meaning. And also when it's how do we balance that? How did you do, and what do you suggest we do balancing this
Whew.
beautiful life that we
That's a huge question, and I wish I had a really just simple answer, because I don't know that I've found that balance. Um, for me, what happened for me personally is I realized how codependent I am and how much I did for other people and lost myself. So, one of the things that I have to keep doing is checking in with myself. Am I being authentic? Am I taking care of that highest sense of self? Am I giving away so much of myself to everyone else that I'm lost? So that's what I have to check in first. And then I have to realize, am I feeling vibrantly fit and healthy? And the only way I can feel that is if I'm getting enough sleep. Am I eating properly? Am I meditating? Am I doing the exercise that I need, whatever that is, swimming, walking, yoga, whatever it looks like? Am I taking time out where it's just quiet? I'm just sitting and reading or walking on the beach, whatever that is. And I really, it has to be purposeful, you know, it has to be, I have to be conscious of it, because it is so easy to lose that. It's so easy to just give away my time and suddenly realize at the end of the day, when I fall over into bed exhausted, what, wow, where was I today? So I think it is truly a moment by moment, for me anyway, thing that I have to pay attention to, be conscious of, and sometimes even schedule that time to balance myself in.
Gosh, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm.
I'm listening. Yes. So it goes back to self-love,
Oh,
self-care.
completely.
Yes, self-awareness, self-knowledge. So the topic that I chose for this episode, let me see if you agree with it, is overcome addiction, create, inspire, and find your path. Is that
Mm. Oh, I love that.
would that be
Yes, I
okay?
love that. Thank you.
And going back to create your work with the book and creativity itself, I have an open question here. So, is creativity for everyone? And what blocks creativity? Why do some people believe that's not for them?
Creativity is absolutely for everyone, completely and positively, because and this isn't just my opinion. I believe that it is truly founded. Creativity, everyone has creativity. We all do. And when someone says I'm not creative, it's because they think that they have to be Van Gogh or Picasso. It's Everyone has creativity within them, and creativity connects us to that inner self, to that higher self, to that largest self, to that 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 non-dual self that is. And that when we get lost in that, that is when we are truly created or creative. And it can be anything. As you said, Valeria, it can be anything. It can, for me, I often find that flow writing, because it has become uh, that for me. But it can be painting. And yet, if you say, just paint, someone will say, oh, I can't paint. Yeah, you can. Here's some paint. Here's a brush. There's a wall if you want. Go put color on it. See what moves you. Rub your hand in it. Move it around. What color speaks to you? Go out and put your hands in dirt. Play with that dirt. Get into that dirt and move it around. What colors do you want to plant to see grow? What do you want to cook? What do you want to smell and to taste and to see while you're cooking? Put on some music, some loud music, and move. Speaking of which, I love the beginning of your podcast. I always move to it when you have it on. So and that's creativity. It's whatever that hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, writing, speaking, whatever it is that makes your heart race and makes your body get excited, because there is where we are connected. And we all are. We are all creative. That is the essence of self.
Gosh, Patty is so inspiring and so timelessly wise. That to me is
Mm,
timeless wisdom. That's what we need
mm,
to hear more. I know, people talk about different kinds of wisdom. There's all kinds of people who are wise when it comes to health, and they are very knowledgeable about foods and this and that, how to sleep better, but for some reason, I'm very devoted to timeless wisdom, something that over and over again, it's still valid and very much the ground. When we find our true self, we're really connected with the divine, God, life, universe, whatever you call it. Then that's when creativity basically tells us that everything is interconnected, that everything is divine. There's
yeah,
nothing that's not divine.
there's nothing that's not.
No, everything's
Yeah,
happening.
everything. We're all interconnected. It is all interconnected. We are all.
The interesting thing we have heard about the oneness, right? That we are one, two. We hear all these timeless kind of statements and wisdom, but how do I? And some people ask, how do I apply that into my daily life? How do I really embody this oneness, this interconnectedness? What is the role of spirituality in recovery?
Mm.
Is belief in the higher power a requirement in recovery? But we can leave the second part out. Maybe the first part is what I really am trying to get at. So, what is the role of spirituality in recovering from addiction?
I think it's imperative, but it's vital that one understands, and I'm speaking from a 12-step recovery model. Recovery has many pathways, but from a 12-step model, it's important that one thinks of it as a power greater than ourself, lower s self, even though as we grow in it, we realize that we are all higher case self. But that's a big concept. But the idea that I don't have to do this alone. And that means connection to others and connection to that higher self that can be whatever we see it to be. It can be nature, it can be just energy, it can be whatever that higher power means to you. And let me just tell you a story that was very helpful to me. When I first got sober, my sponsor, which is like a mentor in 12 step programs, my sponsor was talking to me about finding a spiritual path. And I said, I was raised Catholic and I saw hypocrisy from the beginning, and that doesn't work for me. And so she said, well, you don't have to follow that anymore. Let's fire that God and find something else. And I said, oh, you can't do that. And she said, well, yeah, you can. And so she said, okay, so let's just say that one doesn't work anymore. What works for you? What idea? And so I started talking to her about this nurturing, caring, much more feminine, maternal, loving energy. And as I spoke of it, I just had this feeling just flow over me. And I just started sobbing, absolutely sobbing. And Nancy, bless her heart, did not, say, oh, there you go. She just let me be, let me feel it, allowed me to be embraced, is the best word, by it. And that was the beginning of my spiritual awakening, because it certainly wasn't in a Catholic church. It wasn't. I saw hypocrisy there in the way that I was raised and what I saw. I'm not saying that Catholicism doesn't work for a lot of people. I'm not putting that down in any way. But I saw real duality there. Whereas what I was experiencing in that moment was that non duality, was that encompassing, was that like largesse is the best way. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Mm.
I mean, I'm very devotional when it comes to the expression of the non-dual within the duality. I love
Mm.
when, parts realize that, wait a minute, I'm a part of the whole. So I'm not alone. I'm just part of this
Exactly.
amazing
Mm.
orchestra that we call life.
I love it. Mm.
It's amazing when we see people, I mean, myself included, the body, mind here, and then others like you and so many people that I meet. It's beautiful. It feels like a
Mm.
flower, though. It's almost like a flower blossoming. Yeah.
Blossoming. Absolutely. I love this quote by an author, Johann Hari, and he says, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And that connection with others that one finds in 12 step rooms, but also that connection to that deepest sense of self. And finding that's the spiritual path.
Yes. I love that. I love how you found your own way of defining spirituality,
Mm.
not just defining intellectually, but living it, right? Applying
Feel it.
that.
It
Yeah.
is. It's
Feeling it,
very,
right.
yeah, it's
Mm.
very sensual. You feel it. You can feel
Yes.
embraced by it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's true, Patty. So let's go back to your book. Why I mentioned this off record. So Meg is your protagonist. Why fiction? Why fiction?
I find that, well, for me, it's for me. I learn better through storytelling. And I find that others hear better through storytelling. I'm not an expert. I don't want to write a book and say, here's what I say, because hell, I don't know. I mean, here's something that worked for me in one way. But if I can tell a story in which Meg is an amalgamation of, I don't know how many women I spoke to. I spoke to, I will say hundreds, but it may not have been that many, but it felt like that many. I spoke to so many women, and she is an amalgamation of these women. She's not me, but I have part of me in her. There's lots of women that are in her, and her journey was the journey of many different women, not just me. That road, I didn't take that road trip. That road trip, there were pieces that I've been on, and there were places that I had been, and there were people that I had met, but I had all of these stories from women that talked about women that they had met that I then wove into the story. So it was about weaving. It was about weaving other people's stories into that, so I could be a storyteller.
I have heard that there's actually more truth in fiction than in nonfiction. It's interesting to kind of acknowledge that. One of the questions that I had to ask was about, you mentioned about the seven. Is that the AA program? That's not really. It's made for men, basically. Is that something that?
Okay, so one of the, and that's a great question. I think that this will resonate for any of the people listening that have had any contact with 12-step programs, and certainly people that have read my book or that know me. I had a real problem with the patriarchy that is a part of the 12-step. And the book, the 12-step main book, the big book, was written in 1935 by a man, by several men, and it was for men, and it's very, very um, male. and and there's a very strong patriarchy that exists within that book and within many rooms. When I first got sober in 1988, I walked into a room in Tucson, Arizona, and there were about 30 women in there. It was a women's group, and it was all, not all, but mostly youngish women about my age, in their late 20s, early 30s. There was such love. There was such emotion. Women were crying. It throbbed with emotion and with heart. And that was my group. And then we moved to New Zealand, to a small town, and there wasn't a lot of recovery. And the first meeting that I went to was 95% male, mostly older men. And when I cried in the meeting, I was told to stop crying, and I was told to put a plug in the jug, to shut my mouth. You've got two ears and one mouth. Just listen, come to meetings, you'll be fine. And I kept saying, but I'm not fine. You know, and all you need is to come to a meeting. That's all you need. And I just felt crazy. And eventually, that's not the only reason. I take full responsibility for myself. But that I quit going to meetings. I lost that connection that one needs. And I just thought, I can do this on my own. I don't need you. And so eventually, I started drinking again. I was drinking again for almost 13 years. When I got sober again, I wanted to find that connection. And I found another woman who was sober. And I said, I need to create I need a meeting, but a women's meeting, or a meeting that's focusing on emotional sobriety. And she said, let's start our own. So we started our own meeting and created that, and that we focused on that. But I spoke, all the women that I interviewed about after the relapsing, so many of them talked about that, talked about the patriarchy, talked about not feeling heard, talked about it feeling they couldn't find comfort in that. So there are other paths, there are other ways. And now I still love the 12 steps because it is spiritually based and I feel that connection. But one must find the meeting that works for them, or, as we did, create it.
Wow, I love that that you created your own meeting. Is that something that you host today, these days?
Well, I've just moved to Portugal, so but what I did, Valeria, which I think can be hopefully inspiring for others, is I moved to a town I had never been to. I didn't know anyone, and I got online and I said, um, here's where I'm living. Is there anyone else here in recovery? And a woman wrote back and said, I am. Let's get together. We got together for coffee, and she said, let's create a meeting. And I said, yes, please. And so we are now creating a meeting where I live. And right now there's five of us, four women and one man, and we're talking about wanting emotional sobriety. We're talking about bringing any addiction in. That's another thing that's crazy making. If you're a drinker, you go here. If you're a smoker, you go here. If you did cocaine, you go here. If you're a sex addict, you go here. If you're a shopping addict, you go here. If you're an eating, it's all addiction. And it makes me crazy that there's this rigidity where there needs to be this fluidity and flexibility, and all one, like we've been talking about.
Yes, yes, yeah. And speaking of creativity, that's what it is too.
Mm.
Bringing together the book and the meeting happening in person. I love that idea. You help a lot of people this way. Talk to me about your own. So it's a 12-week personalized transformative journey. based on the book. Are you following these same steps when it comes to this in person, the group that you're creating now? Because I love them. All these, I will go through them too, if you don't mind. I would love to
Oh,
go through,
please.
yeah, every step. So the first one is just start writing. So that's journaling and writing. There's so many exercises that you propose there that you suggest, and then exploring self-loves to exploring self-compassion, exploring what kindness means to you. I love that.
Mm,
That's for some reason kindness has been a, yeah, like a magnet.
mm,
Exploring saying yes, exploring the idea of forgiveness, exploring intention, exploring gratitude, exploring creativity and why we all need it, exploring the sacred feminine, and then the last one's exploring the idea of living with greater passion and purpose. So, is there one step that kind of it's that you hold it very close to your heart, that's close to you? For me, would be for some reason kindness and the
mm.
sacred feminine, of course.
I feel like they all kind of dovetail together. And I mentioned that in the book, that each one kind of dovetails. And on her journey, she keeps referring back to almost like a Rubik's Cube, that each one she goes to, sort of clicks into place. But I guess, I mean, the overarching one for me is love. And that's where she starts. And that's that whole idea of love, self love, creating love as you go. There's unity, compassion, um, kindness. I love the idea of the divine feminine as well, because of that deep spiritual meaning. So each one, I guess, has its own space, that has its own special place in my heart. But I guess if I had to choose one, it would be love, that overarching love, probably.
Of course. If I had to choose one, would be unity. And that's the one that I didn't mention here for some reason. I skipped that one. Exploring the idea of unity. Yeah, like ironically. And I even have a note here from your book. You say the concept of unity can be described as the state of being undivided or unbroken, a completeness, the quality of being united into one. Unity can denote a combining of all the parts, elements, and individuals into an effective whole. It's because unity, then it's like unifying everything, all the
Mm,
concepts, everything that we think we know, all the experiences and everything that seem to be two, that seem to be separated, like people and things. And what is the big picture? I
mm.
want to know what this is all about. And then now my understanding and hopefully my realization is that everything is not just connected, is infused, is embedded,
Infused,
is
yes.
it's saturated with this
Yeah.
divine energy. So
Oh,
there's
I
nothing
love
that's
that.
not sacred,
Yes.
right?
Yes. 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 There's I, I explore that whole idea of that fusion, of that, yes, that integration. And I love the way that you said it's saturated. I love that. Yes.
It's harmony that's looking for. It's interesting.
Mm,
I feel like the body mind is very much nature, part of this natural world. It might be because we are swimming in it.
mm.
It's like the fish. You can't really, if you ask the fish, where's the water? Where's the
Where's the
ocean?
water?
It
Yeah,
doesn't
right.
know. I have no idea because it's in it.
Right. Because it's in it. Exactly. I mean, that's a great analogy. That's a great analogy. Absolutely.
And
Mm.
it has been very helpful. When I look at my husband, I'm like, wait a minute, you're swimming in it already. So that means you're not what I think you are. So
Right.
good. It helps, to kind of it suspend the ego, the idea that he's somebody that I married and is supposed to do this. He's a man, I'm a woman. We're supposed to play these roles. So it kind of suspend everything. And for a moment, everything becomes so connected that love can't help it but just be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. I had that exact, the reason I'm laughing so hard is I had that exact thought today with my own husband, where I was looking at him and feeling so frustrated about something. And then I just sort of stepped back and sort of thought, we're all here. We're all in it. We're all one. We're all, it's just so easy to become part of that duality and just see all of the separateness instead of realizing that togetherness. Did you ever read or hear about the book The Overstory?
No.
It's a beautiful book, big book. It's a tome. Um, but it's because of your love of nature. I think that you would really appreciate it. It won the Pulitzer, I think, 2 years ago. The Overstory, and it talks a lot about trees. And it's a story, but the trees are a part of the story. And the part that just touched me was how trees communicate and how their roots are connected. And if there's a fire, they can start communicating through a root network to actually, without moving, obviously, to warn others there's problems coming. And suddenly, um, acorns and seeds will fall and flow and get out in order to affirm survival of this. And the way that animals are communicating through with the trees and through the trees. I read this book and I found myself crying so many times in this story, which is a tragic story on many levels as well, as you can imagine, with climate change and everything. But anyway, it's a beautiful book, and I feel certain that you would love it.
Thank you for mentioning. Yes, I never heard about the book, but I did hear about the scientific research about
Mm,
the interconnectedness or the way, yeah, nature communicates
mm.
and support one another. It's all
And
about supportive.
supports one another. Yes.
Ah, amazing. Yeah, it's always
Yes.
right. It's very supportive. In that, if we kind of realize that we are one with nature, maybe because you see how supportive nature is when we are there close to trees and animals. I mean, I have a dog and I love nature. It feels like incredible. It's almost like I'm part of their family. Like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm already I'm part of you, part of me. Interesting enough, it's called the true nature. And go back to your true self, your true nature. The word nature is there too for a
Hmm.
reason. Oh yeah, when it comes to what's happening now, you mentioned climate change and there's fire in California now. Have you
Oh, I
heard of
know.
them?
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it's sad.
know. I know. I have a lot of friends in Pacific Palisades, and
Oh yeah, so
it's
you know.
tragic. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very sad. Is that because we are already in it, we already this divine happening movement here called life. Do you feel that this is the reason why so much unnecessary suffering is happening? Because we have somehow believed that we are not part of the whole, that we are
Mm.
separate?
That's a really hard question. I too am very empathetic and I'm just brought to tears by so much of what's going on right now. Um, yeah, I think the root of it for me, when I'm looking at it and seeing the level of suffering and the level of suffering because of man's inhumanity to man and because of what we've done to our beautiful, beautiful earth. It's 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 literally painful. I think a lot of that is fear, fear based, and uh, fear, greed, uh, not, yeah, people that have stepped away from that truth of unity, of one, of that deepest connection, and stepped away because of, I mean, we can call it a lot of things, but I think ultimately it is fear. And that, when I think too much about it, it sort of just feels like I can just get slammed against a wall, and it hurts. It really hurts. What do you think? What do you think is at the root of it, Valeria?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you said. Yeah, fear, but fear to me is a symptom. So that's a
Mm,
consequence of feeling, of believing that you're separate from the
yeah,
whole. And
yeah,
then now you're trying to swim out of the water, out
yeah,
of the ocean, trying to make, you live in land, although you are from the water, so you can't really
yeah.
swim.
So, in your opinion, how does one move in in this space where there is this um, lack of believing that we are one, and if fear is only one of the symptoms, what can we, as mere mortals, do, or do we do anything? Is it our job to do anything? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a powerful almost like a food for reflection. But
Mm,
from my perspective, from my experience, has been suffering. So I have suffered, went through a lot of, and even when I feel suffering and pain, they're different to me. It's like holding on to suffering is holding on to something that no longer serves you, or it's not really needed anymore. So pain is natural. So I think I've been through a lot of suffering in order to return to self, to that sacred union. To me, has been suffering. So that has been the path. But for some people, might not, and I think that's different for everyone. Some people are not
Mm,
ready. They're simply not ready, and because everything is divine, there's no judgment. So it's not. It's sad, but there's no. I cannot judge anything. It's a very compassionate
mm,
journey. Life
mm,
is. We never died. Nothing
mm,
really happened or is happening. As you know, people talk about past lives and all that. So it's an ongoing thing. It's
mm.
beautiful though.
And it's a beautiful one. You know, I'm reflecting back to the conversation we had before we started this, and you were asking about recovery, and it brings back very much what you said, that I'm grateful for the fact that I've had the whole thing with addiction. Through my suffering, I found this awakening. And so you saying that is a beautiful dovetail into that. And I'm grateful beyond measure that I was able to experience that and come out on the side.
Right. And now what you're doing is something very amazing because you're inspiring other people to recover without or step into recovery without going into unnecessary suffering. So to me, there's two ways. One would be suffering, which has been most of my journey, and then inspiration. So
Mm,
that's the other way of getting out of that. And that's what
mm,
you're doing by being you, awakening for your own, not just recovery, but your own self, by
mm,
being in love and living your life the way you are. I love the way you started by using these beautiful qualities, to talk about the people around you. And that said a
mm,
lot. That's to do with love. So you
mm.
swim in love,
No, thank you.
which is so beautiful to see. See, again, it's like a flower, yeah,
Mm.
blossoming. Thank you for saying yes to that movement of becoming this beautiful flower and inspiring others to do the same,
Mm.
to
Oh,
unfold.
thank you. Thank you.
Gosh, we almost at the end, almost. But is there anything that you would like? I love the quotes in your book. I have to say that too. I mean, you have some beautiful one, wise ones, deep ones there. Um, about one that relates to you very much as a writer is Anne Frank. She said, "I want to write, but more than that, I want to bring out of all kinds of things that lie buried in my heart." I
Mm.
mean, that is just so inspiring.
Mm. Yeah.
That's why you have there, I'm sure.
Mm.
It's so inspiring. So, is there anything that I left? I mean, there's so many questions I didn't ask you that I had in my note here. So, I mean, I could talk to you forever about these things, and I
Oh.
apologize for being spontaneous a lot of times and
Oh, I
going
love
off
the
topic
spontaneity. I
and
love
all
the
that.
spontaneity. I love the questions that you had ready, but the fact that you listen so carefully and then draw out from that place of listening. And I really appreciate that. It shows
Yeah.
a caring, and it shows a
Mm.
curiosity. And I really appreciate that about you. Your heart glows in your
Oh my
interviews. It
God,
really
so
does.
yours. Thank you for being
Thank
this
you.
beautiful
Thank
human
you.
being, fully human, fully divine. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. This has
So,
just been such a treat. Such
yeah,
a treat.
yeah, I usually say like a soul treat, but yeah, a spiritual treat. Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. Yes, I love this. So before we say goodbye, is there anything that you left unsaid for today's conversation?
I don't think so. I feel like, well, I mean, I could, like you said, I could sit
Yes,
here for hours and talk to
yes,
you. I feel like we've just sort of uncovered a few things, and I'd love to deepen and
right.
chew on more.
Yes,
So,
yes.
is there more I could say? Oh, so much more. But I feel like enough
Mm.
is said for this interview right now.
Thank you. So I want to mention your website is pattyclark.org. They'll
Mm.
be on the podcast notes. Everything will be there, will be clickable. Before we say goodbye, I have this question about freedom. This platform is titled The Freedom to Feel for a reason. So, I actually will ask two in one. What experiences you wish everyone to have before they die? That's one. And what is freedom to you, Patty?
Experience to have before they die a true and authentic love of self, where there is a feeling of absolute love, caring, appreciation of self, just as they are, warts and all. And what is freedom to me? Freedom to me is that ability, willingness, and opportunity to be authentic self, and not to be constantly, and speaking again for myself, not to be questioning myself, second guessing myself, just that freedom and that willingness to be completely vulnerable and open to being that authentic self.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Mm,
Gosh. Thank you so much again for being you, for saying yes to life, to this, the depth that you have, and for exploring with curiosity in your beautiful heart the mysteries and the complexities of life. You're
mm,
just very courageous. It takes courage to do
mm,
what you're doing, especially when it comes to addiction, which I don't have much experience. That's not part of. Although, of course, we're all addicted to something or have had been, but not to substance. And I know how painful that is.
mm.
So, from seeing people around me. So thank you so much again for the courage and for being the inspiration for all of us. Thank you, Patty. And we'll talk soon. We'll be in touch again. I would
All
love to be
right.
in touch and to continue
Thank you.
our conversation. Bye for
Thanks so
now.
much.
Thank you.